Here's all the tabbing for the boat. 4-inch and 6-inch 1708 biax. And a couple pieces of PL ply that I'm going to use. I'm not going to use that on everything. Most of this is the tabbing, 6-inch tabbing to go between the bottom and the inside of the hull on the inside of the boat. So there's several pieces for that. Whole boat, the cockpit, and the forward cabin. Everything's going to get that tabbing. And then I have a few pieces for some other uses. I've decided, after much thought, I've decided to go ahead and tab the major bulkheads. 12 and 9.5 I'm going to do on both sides, forward and aft. And I'm going to do the aft side of bulkhead 2 and the forward side of bulkhead 19.5 with this 4-inch tabbing. So this is an unnecessary step. It's not required. It's not even mentioned in the plans or specs. I'm going to tab the bottom. I might as well tab the bulkheads. And I'm also tabbing the transom because that's an area I definitely feel is maybe a little light. I know it's got the wider, heavier framing in place on the sides, and it's going to get a 2x8 across the aft side to actually mount the motor. But I think a little tabbing won't hurt here, just to make sure this is super strong. Good morning, it's another day, and today's task is to get as much of this tabbing in as I can. And I'm starting with the tabbing along the bottom. That's that seam along the hull and the bottom on the inside. And I'll do it all the way from bulkhead 2 right here and all the way aft. I do have a full-length piece to reinforce the stem, and the main reason for that is just a little extra strength for the bow eye. I want to make sure that that's super strong. So if I glass this whole stem piece to the hull on each side and across the whole back, then when I install the bow eye through that, it's just helping transfer that load all up and down. This material it's quite redundant. I keep saying that, and you're probably wondering, well, why in the world are you putting it in? Well, I don't know. It's the truth. But here we are. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to start up here in the bow, and I'll do the bottom seams in the bow, and I'll work my way aft. So let's get going on this. So I've spent the morning, about 3 hours, doing all this tabbing inside the boat. Tabbed all the bottom with 6-inch tabbing between the bottom and the side of the hull. And against my own judgment and against the requirements, I've gone ahead and tabbed these two major central bulkheads. I've tabbed these on both sides, forward and aft. And I've also tabbed the exposed side of this forward bulkhead number 2. And of course I've tabbed all the hull alongside in the cockpit. There's the outside of bulkhead 12. And the forward-facing side of bulkhead 19 here at the aft end of the cockpit. Here at the stem, I put a full-length piece of tabbing from the bottom almost up to the top. And that's just to help reinforce this in a major way for my bow eye, so that I won't ever fear anything about cranking this boat up on a trailer. And then to finish off, I've tabbed the transom along the bottom and up the sides. A little reinforcement on this transom certainly isn't going to make me feel bad. I'm only putting a 30 horse outboard on this, so it's 150-ish pounds. You know, the minimal torque that it puts on a boat like this, but again, the transom needs to be strong. I didn't do the aft side of this bulkhead with tabbing because this gets a semi-removable panel that forms the outboard well, and it's removable for access underneath. It will be well sealed in place, but it's not going to be permanent. And because of that, I wanted to avoid undue complications at the corners, like tabbing, and plus I don't really think it's needed. So I didn't tab this side. So when this is all done, I'll give it a very light scuff, and from there I'll see whether I see any need to. I'm not planning to do any real fairing, but maybe a little bit at an edge here and there, depending on how it comes out. So that was today. We'll let that cure overnight. So there you have it, day of tabbing. Next thing to do is come around and open up all these little screw holes and nail holes and so forth. Get ready to start filling those. There's a bunch of them all around the boat, just from screws and various other things. So I'll go around and get those ready. And then after I opened those up with the countersink, I went around with some epoxy fairing compound and filled those in. One little low spot on this forward seam. And otherwise they're just screw and nail holes. Just slightly opened up so that they actually hold some fairing compound. And I did this inside and out. Most of the holes are on the outside. There are a few on the inside. It's just a bunch of screw holes. This will all get covered in fiberglass later when I sheathe the hull. So this is just to bring it up even. It's not fancy. Maybe one application will do it. Maybe two. Epoxy shrinks a little when you put it in, so typically you have to fill it a second time at least, even a small screw hole like these. And I did the same thing on the inside. You can see a couple over there, a couple here from the temporary frame, a few in the bottom of the boat where those little temporary pine braces have been over the seams. And just, you know, nail holes from the batten, some screw holes from various points in assembly, that sort of thing. And these holes left over from the cross brace I installed when I flipped the boat. And I filled the, I don't know, 1.25 inch hole or whatever I drilled through this bulkhead when we were turning the boat. Got tape over the outside. Real exciting stuff, but all part of the prep. The next step on this hull repair was the first application of fairing compound. And here I focused on filling the small groove left in the area I tapered out around the edges, and keeping that flush with the surrounding hull, and then just a light skim over the center to kind of bring that up just a touch. I'll sand this lightly and then I'll start to figure out what it actually needs. There's still a low spot over here that I just left for now. It's easy to fill that later. But overall, this looks pretty good so far. I mean, the patch itself was good and fair with the hull. So this shouldn't be a difficult process from here, but next sanding will tell me where it's low, and I'll go from there. It's yet another new day, and I've just gone around the boat and lightly sanded the first round of fairing on all these little screw holes and so forth, as well as on the hull patch here. And then after that, I went around and lightly applied a second coat pretty much everywhere. This I'm slowly bringing up to its final shape. Probably be one more application after this. I always sneak up on the final shape. I don't try to overfill and sand it down. That's not the right way to do it. This way we keep the shape of the surrounding hull intact and slowly build up the patch as needed. This fairing compound is quite shallow. The patch is slightly lower than the surrounding. That's by design. We don't want it higher, obviously. So that's coming right along. Probably one more application on that. Otherwise, I've just gone around all these screw holes. It's not exciting. There's just always a little bit of a kind of half moon or quarter moon shape part of it on these round holes that doesn't get filled on the first application. So this is not enthralling stuff, but it's all part of the process to bring this boat up to final readiness for on the exterior fiberglass and on the interior epoxy. So that'll all come in due course. So it's another quick round of sanding on the various screw holes, etc., inside and outside the boat. This is the last sanding. I went around with 120, just cleaned these up a little. They're all flush. Didn't want to over sand. It's too easy to sand the plywood and create weird flat spots. So I went around the whole boat and did this inside and out, and I'm calling it done prior to the next steps, which on the interior of the boat here is going to be epoxy coating. A couple coats probably on everything. And on the exterior of the boat, it'll be 6-ounce fiberglass sheathing. And take a look at the other side, inside and out as we walk by. So there's all the screw holes and so forth all filled up. The fairing on this hull repair here is basically done. Just a little bit of low right here in the middle, which I expected because this was slightly wider than my trowels. I did it mostly by feel and by eye. So one more quick application on here, just in the center part, and this will be ready to go. It's going to be sheathed over, but still, it's all about the prep. Everything's about the prep. The way I like to approach these things is not to worry about trying to trowel it perfectly fair and smooth in one go, or overfill it and spend a day hand sanding it with a board. That's not my style. What I do is work my way up, get it to a point where there's just minor low spots like this. That'll be a cinch to trowel in. One more light sanding. With this, it's, you know, I've got to be real careful to avoid over sanding because the plywood is much softer than the epoxy. So I've been using non-aggressive tools and non-aggressive sandpaper weights and just doing my best to keep it fair all the way through the process. That's always good practice. So one more little application here, and I'm going to call that done and start turning my attention to sheathing this hull. And I've also prepared these 4 hull seams. They just have a couple of spots like that right there. Another little slightly low spot here. So I'll just touch that up with some fairing compound. I thought they were mostly there, and they are mostly there, but this one in particular, it's just got, you can see all the low because it's the darker color. I could sheathe over this, but the better it is now, the better it'll be after the sheathing goes on and the less work it'll take. I want to put the sheathing on and just do fill coats and not any fairing. And this is the final hull seam. Just needs the barest of touch-ups. I'll just skim some in there with my 6-inch trowel and sand it smooth, and that'll take care of that. I lightly sanded with a 6-inch random orbit and 120 grit all 4 of these hull seams just to bring them smooth. And that's good enough for sheathing over the top. These are the last steps before I actually start to do the preparatory work for the sheathing, which will be cutting lots of cloth, doing some masking, and whatever else. So all 4 of these hull seams have been sanded. They're all flush and smooth. No low spots remain. Nothing to speak of anyway. So we're in good shape there, ready to sheathe. Similarly, I've finished up on this hull repair patch. The last time I just filled in this sort of central area. And, you know, it's not a, at this point, none of these are finishes that I would paint over. But I'm not painting, I'm putting sheathing on. And then there will be final prep after that point to get the surface ready for final coatings. So this is smooth and fair. Ready for the next step.